I'd like a large what? Huh? Extra thick!
Greetings and salutations, denizens of YouTube. My name is Ichi Charmed, and today we're celebrating my reaching of 413 subscribers by doing a somewhat unorthodox Analysistuck video. A two-parter that is also the debut of the Bard of Breath, a Redux on the Page of Time, and a session analysis involving the two class specs. Will this be my longest video yet? Let's find out together. And also, thanks for getting me this far. Those that have been here since the beginning, those that have stuck around during my 2 to 3 year hiatus, those that have recently joined, those that like, those that share, those that comment, and especially those that subscribe. Thanks to each and every one of you. I guess we'll do this bit by bit, as usual. First, the class and aspect of the Bard of Breath, then for the Page of Time, the class specs as a whole respectively via analyzing personality and powers, then the session analysis. The Bard is one of the destruction classes of Homestuck and the passive counterpart to the Prince. Bards allow destruction of and invite destruction through their aspect. Bards also ghost their opposite aspect until they encounter the Bard's Crisis, an event in their development that pushes them into their own. When this happens, the Bard must not succumb to the whims of their aspect, like how Gamzee was consumed by rage but then invited destruction through rage, a bit more secretly. Gamzee allowed destruction of rage by use of Soaper Slime, also by letting Karkat pap him into calming down while inviting destruction through rage by channeling his anger into a major power boost and distorting the decisions of Terezi, making her think that killing Vriska was the only way. Cronus allowed destruction of hope by allowing what could have been a very close friend or even agent of this evil magician talked about in his lore to dissuade him out of his beliefs on magic. According to Arania, Bards are labeled as wildcards, being the reason for their session's improbable victory, spectacular failure, or both. All the best stories have one in them. In accordance with them being wildcards, Bards could possibly imitate other aspects to achieve their goals, like how Gamzee used Equise's blood to smudge certain bits of information while using Aradia's time music boxes to travel through time. Or maybe that's just a Gamzee thing. Who knows? Maybe we'll get a new Bard in Beyond Canon that can show off more of what they can do in canon, but so far Bards seem to have easygoing, cowardly, and/or avoidant personalities. Breath is the inverse of blood and has to do with the wind, direction, motion, flexibility, movement, guidance, freedom, and independence. Breath players seem to be guided or advised in some way. John, the heir of Breath, is just surrounded by others that can offer guidance, like his consorts, friends, and even Vriska, while Tavros, the Page of Breath, also received guidance from Vriska when he was in the game. Breath players also have to deal with trying not to be too airy or apathetic, having just enough breath to have freedom to do what you want, but having enough blood to also stay grounded and keep the bonds you have. Breath players in general tend to whisk around others in what they do. They can also make for good leaders and motivators, albeit unknowingly. Looking at the extended Zodiac, Breath players, whether wanting to or not, tend to leave an impression on others with their expansive and flexible nature, pulling others along into the adventures they take. This leads to heroism as a result, though they seem to underestimate themselves, though not always due to low self-esteem. They just like to do their own thing, which I personally kind of love. At their best, they can be motivated, adaptable, and forward-thinking. At their worst, however, the Breathbound can be volatile, avoidant, and gullible. The Page is one of the exploitation classes of Homestuck, and the passive counterpart to the Knight. Thanks to a Homestuck Beyond Canon AMA in the Homestuck subreddit, we now know that the Page class is one who fights to preserve, which makes sense for what we've seen of Tavros and Jake at least. The Page may start off weak, as we already know, but the well of limitless potential brewing inside of them upon being realized will give them the strength and courage they need to wield power rivaling that of the Lord, looking at Jake, who can blast and knock out powerful enemies like Caliborn and Grimbark Jade, or completely incinerate weaker foes, and his clothes, haha, rhymes, with his blindingly bright hope field. Tavros, while not a god tier, had the cojones and charisma to not only gather an army to take on Lord English, but stood up against the not-so-jolly Green Giant himself. Time is the inverse of space and has to do with time itself, destruction, the end, death, destiny, music, and repetition. Time players, usually, have a construct called the, scratch construct on their planet that allows them to initiate the scratch, a kind of hard reset for sessions that are basically screwed over. All time players also have some kind of power with time travel, so there's that as well. Time players may also be kind of responsible for the assistance in breeding a successful Genesis Frog / New Universe, and might possibly have Hephaestus as their denizen. According to the Extended Zodiac, the Time-Bound are fighters that resist whatever is thrown their way, which results in their lives being filled with struggle. They much prefer action over passive acceptance, achieving the impossible through non-traditional and unconventional ways. At their best, the Time-Bound are empathetic and relentless problem solvers. At their worst, they are ruthless, defensive, and impulsive. Okay, here we go. Bard of Breath. The Bard would be a pretty laid-back, casual, but potentially clingy kind of friend. Hang around them and they're very chill company, but the instant you try to leave to go to the bathroom or deal with something important, they may throw question after question about where you're going, when are you coming back, and if they can join you. They're good enough friends, but yikes, can they be a bit suffocating when it comes to you and your own freedom. When they reach their crisis, though, they'll suddenly start pushing away the people they held close and desperately want their own freedom, calling their friends the ones that are suffocating. If/when they do handle their crisis, though, they'll come out of it with a healthy perception of how much space they should give the people around them, while also knowing when to set boundaries on their oown freedom. You know, communication being important for any relationship and whatnot. Also, hey, since this is the classic of Archjack Vurat, if/when I do a Redux on the Bard of Breath, I'll include some stuff about him once I've made enough headway into Vast Error. As for powers and abilities, the Bard of Breath could create a space around them where either wind scythes are constantly slicing up everything and everyone around them, or a vacuum where only they could breathe within it. Anyone else has their oxygen almost instantly snuffed up before they drop to their knees, gasping for air. Worst case scenario, and I really hate the possibility of this being a power they have, even though it fit considering Sweetbro and Helijeff, but they may be able to wield a power similar to the Wario Waft, patented by Wario himself. Or maybe their burps and sneezes would wield incredible power as well. For less bodily-based examples, though, the Bard of Breath could also allow destruction of an enemy's movement and speed the closer they get to the Bard, or the Bard could turn themselves into a nigh-unstoppable battering ram, inviting destruction through their own freedom and movement, akin to Sloth from Fullmetal Alchemist. Now onto the Page of Time themselves. Personality-wise, I could see the Page of Time pretending to be a fighter and someone who knows how to stand up for themselves, but when someone just enough out of their league steps up to them, the page slowly but surely stops barking and shows how little bite they actually have. They also might have issues truly understanding the gravity that death and destruction can bring, maybe causing them to disregard their responsibilities as a time player in their session. And by the time they do learn their lesson, it may be too late, and that forces the Page of Time to go back in time to fix their mistakes. This time, a little, if not a lot, wiser. If not, also a little traumatized after the fact. Maybe something like Peter Parker and his whole "with great power comes great responsibility" arc in the first Raimi Spider-Man movie. So, once they truly grow into their own, the Page of Time becomes a true hero of time in their own rights. Powers-wise, I could see the Page of Time being an ace support when it comes to rewinding time in order to cancel or redirect attacks, especially projectiles, in interesting ways, turning one enemy's attack against a totally different enemy with enough foresight and planning. Maybe they'd even act like Echo from League of Legends, rewinding time with a device they alchemized until they grow into and master their natural time abilities, rewinding things and trying out new tactics until they find something that works. After that, the page could learn to slow down or even totally stop time within an area, or have a passive aura that slows down enemies that get close enough to them. Also, borrowing a page, haha, from Gerard, the Page of Time may be able to accelerate the healing of injuries to an almost Wolverine and Deadpool degree, or the worsening of injuries to an almost King from the Seven Deadly Sins degree, or even move their friends around different timelines whenever things become too bad until they find one that can help their team achieve victory. Now finally, session analysis for the Bard of Breath and Page of Time. Honestly, if the Bard can protect the Page and help them develop their powers, the Page of Time is carrying the session, straight up, hopping from one timeline to another until they can gather a reliable team with either a space player or the right people to crack Suburb and form some kind of victory from the wreckage. Pretty nitty-gritty, possibly lackluster compared to all the yapping that came before, but yeah. And I believe that's all I have to say on the matter. If you've enjoyed this video, then please like and share it. If you'd like to see more, please subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and leave suggestions and comments below. My next video will be on the Seer of Life, a surprise victor in the polls, if I'm to be honest, but I will save that topic for the next video. Until then, I bid you dudes, dudettes, and others adieu. Bye!